My name is John Moffat, and this is a short introduction to the financial accounting paper. It used to be called paper F3, now it's called FA, but in other respects it hasn't changed. And I want to briefly explain what the exam's about, how you're actually examined, and how to go about studying for it. So first of all, the syllabus. You can find a detailed syllabus on the ACCA website, but there are the syllabus headings, and then under each heading list the various topics that need to be learned. But without going through every item, it's a bit silly to try and explain everything here. That's what the lectures that we provide are for. But I think whatever you've done before at school or wherever, I think most of you will have heard of something that most people still tend to call a balance sheet and a profit and loss account. Albeit we've changed the names. Its balance sheet is now statement of financial position, profit and loss account is statement of profit or loss. Don't worry if you haven't heard of them, and they're all explained obviously in my full lectures. But the point is that companies are required by law that certainly at least once a year they produce statements showing, well, a statement showing how much profit the business has made or loss, another statement showing what the business owns, what they owe, the position of the business, and another statement showing what's happened to cash, what cash have they received, what cash have they paid. And ultimately, all of this exam is leading to how those statements are prepared at the end of the year. And you'll see here, preparing basic financial statements. This balance sheet or statement of financial position, the statement of profit or loss. But in order to prepare them, during the year there have been lots of things happening, lots of transactions occurring. We'll have been buying things, we'll have been selling things, and of course they all need recording. And so the use of double entry. Some of you may well have heard of debit credits, but how we go about recording everything that happens during the year. And here, recording transactions and events, the sorts of books we use to do all the recording. A fair amount of terminology involved there. And something called preparing a trial balance, which again, to try and explain now in 2 seconds would be silly, but it's a very standard way of being able to check that we've been recording things basically correctly before we spend time preparing these statements. So they all build up, all this recording and checking build up to preparing statements, how much profit and so on, at the end of the year. The other bits, the context and purpose, is more background, what's the financial accountant's job, and the qualitative characteristics of the financial information, what we're trying to achieve with the information, but they're both very much background chapters. Later, you'll see simple consolidated financial statements. What we're talking about there is where there's more than one company, where perhaps I've got a company, but my company also owns part of another company. So there are 2 separate companies, but if I own the other one, they may be separate in law, but effectively it's as though it's one big company. So we can have a bit of fun there, effectively combining them as though they're one big company. It says simple because I'm sure you're aware there are, in the ACCA syllabus, there are 2 more financial accounts exams where we look at certainly this consolidation side in much more detail, make it more complicated. And finally, interpretation of financial statements. I've mentioned several times that there's a statement showing how much profit we've made, but it gives quite a lot of detailed information in the statement. And people want to be able to compare it with last year and say, well, Are we doing better or worse than last year? Obviously, we look at the profit. Ooh, we made more profit, that's good. But there's quite a bit of analysis or interpretation we can do, and you can be expected to do, sorting out, why we made more profit or less profit, which bits are doing well, which bits are doing badly, and so on. So there is quite a lot involved. However, all of it is covered in our lectures. I'm coming to what we provide shortly. Before we do, the structure of the exam. The exam is 100 marks and it's 2 sections. Section A, 35 objective questions of 2 marks each. So they're all very short questions, but they're various styles. Maybe a short question asks you to pick. They'll give you 4 alternative answers and ask you to pick the correct one. Others may ask you to calculate a number and then type it in a box. So there are different styles of questions. I'll tell you how you can get used to the styles shortly. Section B, there's 2 what are called multitask questions of 15 marks each. And what they are, there are 2 questions, each of which there's much more information at the start of the question, so there's much more to read. But then there are several little questions, maybe 2 marks, maybe 3 marks or whatever, several questions on the same information. In total, they'll add up to 15 marks for each of the 2. In fact, although it might not mean much yet until you've done your studying, the examiner said that one of those will be on the preparation of financial statements. So maybe asking you to produce this balance sheet or figures from it, or this statement of profit or loss. The other one will always be on consolidations. However, as I've said, until you've done the studying, obviously, neither of those may mean terribly much. You take the exam on computer-based, on demand. You can take the exam whenever you want. You have to make an appointment first. But if you look on the ACCA website, you can find out in your country where the nearest place to you is that you can actually take the exam. So you make an appointment, but you can do it any time. There aren't standard times. It can be any time through the year. You have 2 hours for the exam. If you look back to, as I said a minute ago, there are 100 marks. The pass mark is 50%, and you get your results immediately. So hopefully you've got more than 50% and you've passed. If you have failed, then, well, obviously you need to do a bit more studying, but then you can take it again, but you get your results straight away. There's a specimen exam on the ACCA website. Well, there are several. And so when you've done your studying, it is desperately important you try the exams on the ACCA website. The marks don't count, obviously, it's only a specimen. But just to get used to what the exam looks like on computer, how to navigate around, the sorts of questions that are asked, how you enter your answers, and so on. You obviously don't want to waste time in the middle of the exam trying to sort out, which button are you supposed to press type thing. As far as studying for the exam is concerned, everything on our website is free, and on our website our notes and lectures cover everything needed to be able to pass the exam well. That's the key bit. There are lecture notes which you can download and print out. And going with them are video lectures on each chapter in the notes, where I work through the examples in the notes, I explain what's happening, I expand on the notes. But the two go together. It's no good just looking at the lecture notes without watching the lectures. They are only notes. Again, the lectures themselves expand and explain on them. Within them, I say again, it's more than enough to be able to pass the exam well, but to help you check yourself as you're going along, we've got what we call flashcards. They're just a quick little thing to flick through, which are testing you mainly on bits of terminology. This is revision. There are tests at the end of each chapter. In the notes there's a link to an online test, a short test of 5 or 6 questions that are the sort of questions you'll get in the exam. We've got a full 2-hour mock exam online. Again, the same structure as you can expect in the exam. And we've also got 2 forums. There's one FA forum where for students to discuss and help each other, and also an Ask the Tutor forum, where if you do come across any problem or anything you don't understand or weren't clear about, if you ask in that forum, you type in your question, but I'll reply always within 24 hours. Now, all of that together is all you really need for the studying. I've said twice, it covers more than enough to be able to get a good mark in the exam. But just as vital is practice. You must buy a revision kit, or one company calls it an exam kit, from one of the ACCA approved publishers. We don't supply them. You've got to buy it. They're not that expensive. But you must get one, because they are full of exam standard questions and answers and workings, and it's impossible to practice too much. You know, all right, we have these short tests, but you've got to practice, practice, practice. Once you've done the studying and you feel confident, the only way you can really test that you understand things is by practicing questions, but also getting used to the style of questions, getting used to the wording, getting used to the speed. One huge problem people have with this exam, however much they've studied, is that you're having to do things so fast that, you know, it's then when you misread things, it's then when you make silly mistakes. Well, the more you've practiced from the revision kit, the more you'll have already misread and made silly mistakes, you know, and you learn from them. There's less chance you'll do it in the exam. Finally, just a couple of ways, or in fact 3 ways you can help us. We're always trying to improve and expand what we offer, but it is free of charge, and the only way we can do it is by having the more people who use us, the more we can provide. So please help us, tell others, spread the word, tell them about Open Tuition, subscribe to the YouTube page. When you're watching a lecture, if you hover your mouse over the top left-hand corner, you'll see a button appears. You can subscribe. It's free, but it does help us. And do help other students on the forums. I said there's a forum where students can help and advise each other. And because it's a very good way of making sure you yourself have understood something. If you can explain something to somebody else who's got a problem, then it makes extra certain that you yourself understand it properly. So you're helping yourself as well as helping others. So there we are. Start working through the lectures, download the notes, and then chapter by chapter work through and enjoy it.